This is Top Shop Podcast.
Shop Podcast.
Top Shop Podcast.
Podcast for automotive service business owners by Paul Donahue.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Top Shop Podcast. We've got an awesome guest. Once again, met Adam Kimmel. He's the Senior Manager of Business Development at Floor and Energy Materials at an AMRA conference, of course. That's a great place to connect with people. AMRA.org, if you guys don't know what that is. So we're going to be talking about refrigerants, correct?
That's right. My favorite topic.
Your favorite topic. Because when I'm looking at this, I did my research, by the way. So, you guys are really known for coming out with some cutting edge stuff, right? I mean, in fact, is Orbia the only one that has this R444A?
Yeah, we are. That's unique to us. It's our product, and one of the other things about Orbia that's interesting is that we own a fluorine mine. So we're a vertically integrated refrigerant manufacturer. So we own the raw material, and we process it into innovative new products like 444A.
Wow! So you actually own the mining infrastructure. So you're 100% in control and quality control, in control of quality control.
Yeah, exactly. I've been to the mine before. It's right in the geographic center of Mexico, and been in this van spiraling down 300 meters underground, and
wow,
that's where they blast the fluorine out of the earth. Yeah, so it was a really amazing process to see, how that, and then there's some post-processing steps that happen at that facility, and then at our U.S.-based manufacturing site in Louisiana.
Now, the standard is the R1234YF. Is that correct?
Yeah, for new vehicles. I mean, 134A was there forever, and then 1234YF is kind of the new incumbent refrigerant that's lower GWP.
And the A was more of the older vehicles, correct?
Yeah, 134A, that was the higher GWP for, after the Montreal Protocol, and there was the ozone depleting concerns. They moved from R12 to 134A.
To 134, okay. Well, all right, cool. And so what are the performance benefits of your R444A over the current standard 1234YF?
So I think the first thing to note is that it's a blend, right? 444A is a blend of 1234ZE, 152A, and R32. And the reason that is impactful is because 1234YF is probably about the best single molecule we have, but it does have some drawbacks. So compared to 134A, it gives up about 10% performance. The boiling point's a little bit higher, so it's not as good for cold temperatures. So it's not a great heat pump fluid, and it's a little bit unstable. So it has an issue where if it's exposed to excess air, it can form this silly string-like polymer material. So 444A aims to correct all of that, right? This blend is really customized to hit the performance and efficiency targets that we wanted from 134A without some of the drawbacks of 1234YF.
Right. So speaking of environment, that's a big issue. That's one of the reasons that for the 1234YF over the A, right, was the environmental. So
exactly,
are there any environmental benefits at all to your company's proprietary 444A or 44A?
Yeah, 444A, it has a little bit higher GWP than 1234YF. So on its face, you would think, all right, well, that's going the wrong direction. But the benefit of that is it's still underneath the GWP 150 threshold, which is where the EPA and the regulatory bodies are going. But with that, it comes a much higher efficiency. So what we see in direct replacement scenarios is efficiency benefits over YF around the order of 10 to 12%. And then we see cooling capacities on the order of about 5 to 10%. So what that means is that one, better fuel economy because you're using up less energy to cool the cabin, longer driving range for an EV, but also a faster time to pull the cabin down from whatever the hot temperature is to the comfort range. We can see up to 4 minutes of faster pull down time given that better performance.
Okay, awesome. Speaking of this new refrigerant, what about the new vehicles, the EV vehicles?
Yeah, and that was, I think, one of the best parts about being open to a blend are once electric vehicles become more commonplace, they create just additional thermal management challenges from the traditional air conditioning. It's no longer just air conditioning, it's thermal management. There's a battery that needs to be cooled. There's no heat source from the combustion engine anymore. So heat pumps are going to become a big opportunity. And the nice thing with 444A is it has a lower boiling bubble point than 1234YF's boiling point, which means it performs much better in cold weather applications. So we've got some testing on some heat pump electric vehicles right now that we'll share some results later this year at an SAE webinar. But it's going to be a lot better for cold weather performance, but it drops right into YF architectures anyway. So same system, better performance, additional range. So
Right.
you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, minimizing how much change you have to do to the system.
Okay. I've got, in fact, I think I just did AC in my Macan this year, and I probably have the YF in it. Um, is it a direct replacement? I mean,
It is. It was formulated to be perfectly compatible. So no system changes at all are needed. Same oil blend, same everything. You can just take out the YF and put in the 444A and it should work better.
okay. Well, what about the trolley carts and all the, the infrastructure that the shops have got? Anything that has to be changed or?
Yeah, now for the trolley carts, they need to have a dedicated machine.
Okay.
So you can take an existing YF machine and reprogram it, which we've
Okay.
worked with all of the leading, cart manufacturers to do that.
Okay.
444A is compatible. That step needs to be done. And then there are some additional fittings that need to go onto the vehicle because, to get the EPA approvals, they require all new refrigerants to have a unique fitting design. So
Hmm.
change the fitting, put the label, update the label on the vehicle, and then use either a cart that's been programmed or just a recovery device to take out the YF and then put in with the 444A cart.
So the existing charge carts, they can handle the blends?
As long as they're reprogrammed for it.
As
Yeah,
long as
because the
they're-
existing ones have an identifier in there, and that identifier it per manufacturer is tied to YF, so that just needs to be reprogrammed for 444A.
Okay. So are shops switching to this 444A, exclusively and dumping the YF?
It just launched this year, so just in the
Okay.
second half of the summer. So we expect this to be more mainstream next year. But it launched for professional service this year, and we're seeing a lot of interest. So we've gotten a lot of questions on these type of system things from technicians, but there's a lot of desire to have an option. YF is there. There's a lot of things about it that people don't really love. Some of the handling concerns that I mentioned. They don't like the price a lot of times.
Right.
So competition is a good thing, right? So this is an alternative for it that gives better performance and is formulated to kind of be future ready for the new vehicle types that come out.
And what are I'm sorry if I had to ask the question again. What are the main benefits of switching from the YF to the 444A? It's going to be a little more expensive for the shop.
Well, I mean, there's some equipment nuance needed, right? You have to reprogram the machine, but the overall cost is expected to be lower, right? The
Oh,
refrigerant
lower.
itself, yeah, the refrigerant's blended with commodity materials. So these are existing refrigerants blended together that are used in other applications. 152A as an example is used in pharmaceutical applications, R32 is used in stationary, and
Right.
1234ZE is used in industrial chillers in
Okay.
stationary. So I mean, they're used all over the place. You take commodity materials and blend them up in a way that elevates the performance over YF, and then the cost of those because of the availability and the commercial access to them is anticipated to be lower.
Oh, so the shop owner can charge the same amount, but have less, but make a higher profit. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it gives the opportunity to say, all right, well, if if it is truly a lower cost alternative, you can split that with the consumer. They can take, a higher percentage of the profit. Ideally, both prices would be lower so that then
sure.
everybody wins, right? So the total cost of ownership is lower. That's the key message, I
What about
think.
the reprogramming? I mean, what's involved in this? I mean, can the shop owner do it, or is it pretty straightforward, or is it on you to
Um,
give instructions, or what?
yeah, the reprogramming I think would need to be done by the manufacturer.
Oh, the
Um,
manufacturer. Okay,
yeah, there'll be a procedure for it.
right.
So it's not it's not something I think that the shops could do on their own,
Okay,
but you could buy a new one that's already pre-programmed, or you could have somebody from that does the reprogramming come in and do it to an
okay.
existing machine.
So I
So
have, some shops, I want them I to do a lot like a 60-second intro, hey, I'm Joe with Joe's Auto Repair, and we've been here for 28 years and whatever. And we are environmentally friendly. All of our, oils and stuff are handled properly, whatever they're supposed to say. What about handling concerns with this, especially something polymer formation or composite shift?
Yeah, that was the issue I was mentioning about the stability. So with 1234YF, if it's exposed to excess air or high oxidizers, it can form this polymer material that can wreck a service machine. So what we haven't seen with 444A is, even if it's mishandled, if it's grossly mishandled, there can be issues like anything, right? You can always make something fail
Sure.
if you try. But we haven't seen under normal circumstances or even light misuse cases, we haven't seen that polymer formation. So it's a more stable alternative and it's less susceptible. You don't have to be as, I don't want to say as careful, but it's just less susceptible when it's mishandled to this failure.
All right. So besides the recharging my charge cart, is there any other special equipment or oils that I'm going to need to make
Yeah,
that?
the oil is the same as I mentioned, and then the fittings would need to be adapted. So you can, the fittings that we've been working on with some of the fitting manufacturers are you take the existing vehicle fitting and put an adapter on top of it that has a unique thread geometry specific to the new refrigerant, and then there's a mating coupler that goes onto that and can do the service that way. So it's the fitting, and then all of the only other thing to do is just to put the new refrigerant name on the label on the vehicle. So you can just cover up the existing refrigerant name with the new one, and the fittings stay with the vehicle after they've been adapted. So then that vehicle becomes a 444A vehicle moving forward.
Are there any performance differences and leaks with the YF?
I mean, there's performance differences. As I was kind of mentioning, it gives about a 10 to 12% efficiency and a 5% performance capacity benefit, which is like a four-minute pull down improvement. For leaks, we haven't seen, the leak event would happen the same with a blend as with the single molecule. One of the concerns that we get a lot is, well, with this blend, and if there's a leak, does the composition of the blend change?
Oh, I
Does one
see.
of the
Right.
components
Okay.
leak out more?
Okay.
And the good news on that is that the testing we've done hasn't shown a meaningful impact from that. It
Okay.
would take a bulk leak of about 25% of the charge before
Oh,
you would
geez.
see the composition
Geez.
change. And
Right.
by that time, you're not cool anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah. You
bigger
got a
issue.
problem, right? You got a bigger
That's
problem than
right.
that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think, most of the questions I had for the R444A. What about the R456A? Can you use the YF, the 123 YF in the R134A, the older vehicles?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of differing opinion out there about this. So for 134A vehicles, 1234YF is being positioned as a retrofit.
Right.
That's where 456A can compete with it. We view that as 456A is a non-flammable, just like 134A.
Okay.
So, we like to think of it as non-flammable vehicles, replace it with the non-flammable refrigerant, change nothing, away you go.
Okay.
For 1234YF, there's just some different system considerations that take into account. The oil is a little bit different. The performance might be a little bit different. So there's some different things that have to be considered. And with any new refrigerant, the fittings and label have to be changed.
The 456A, that's Orbia's proprietary.
Yeah, that's our solution for 134A vehicles. And what I would say is, the benefit of that is, of course, yeah, the direct replacement, you don't have to give up that performance. I was talking before about when when the manufacturers went from 134A to YF,
Right.
they gave up about 10% performance.
Oh,
With
wow.
456, they don't have to do that. The performance is a line-on-line match for 134A.
Oh,
So
awesome.
this is really good news for for really any 134A vehicle that that you wouldn't have to give up that cooling performance. It'll happen quicker and more efficiently, which is good news for the consumer.
Will your 456A, will that work in EVs?
It will. I think the challenge with EVs is just there really aren't that many 134A
No, I
systems
didn't think
out
so.
there.
Yeah.
The new ones aren't even allowed to be 134A anymore. So yes, it certainly will work, but it's not really that gonna. It isn't going to be that common of a situation. So we're not really talking too much about it. We don't get a lot of questions, too much about that, but it certainly will. Anywhere 134A works, 456A will work.
Speaking of EVs, I'd like to ask you. I like to ask you everybody that I talk to on my podcast. Just your opinion. Love to hear it. Where do you think it's going? You think we're all going to
EVs,
be driving around in electric cars in the next 10 years? Or is this just been one massive environmental disaster that's
Yeah.
going to plague us for the next 10 to 20 years? Because what are we going to do with all these batteries once they're the battery and the
Yeah.
car is now worthless.
Yeah.
So after 8 to 10 years, unless in the
My point of view on EV, so this is just my personal opinion, right? We're a little bit predicting the future.
yeah,
But what I know is it's real difficult to develop a new architecture. And the manufacturers have already started down the path of that. There are a lot of models out there. I'm sure there are more in development. So I don't foresee, no matter what happens, either geopolitically, socioeconomically, or whatever, there
right,
will be some fraction of EVs because there are people that want them. There are
right,
people that are, conscious about carbon emissions and things, and there's life cycle analyses to show that EVs actually have a meaningful improvement. The recyclability of batteries is certainly there. I think the charge time remains a question. The stability of that charge and the infrastructure. Can you actually drive from LA to New York in an EV?
right,
And right, all of those
right.
infrastructure questions are absolutely legitimate and real. And I believe they'll be solved. I think the question just becomes at what percentage. I think the fraction of vehicles that are EVs will steadily increase, maybe not at the same intensity and rate as maybe a couple of years ago, but given some of the challenges, it's just going to take a little bit longer. But I certainly think it will continue forward.
I'm hoping for hydrogen. So all the cars are internal combustion. We love the sound of internal combustion cars. So Porsche proved that. It's just if we could move and transport this stuff. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to say earlier. Yeah. A Taycan Turbo S 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds.
Yeah,
Kind of intriguing to me, but
yeah,
there's no sound in the engine because there isn't one.
right,
And it's 60 grand to replace the battery. But what I'm
yeah,
thinking about is will it be 60 grand 8 or 10 years from now when that battery's dead? I don't think so. I
right.
think the battery technology and there will be aftermarket companies that'll say, hey, send it to us and
Absolutely,
we can do it for
absolutely.
10,000, so
Yeah, great point. I think a couple of things on that. So on the battery chemistry, I agree that we're probably one major innovation away from where we'll end up commercial maturity wise in battery chemistry. Solid state's always been held out there as the ideal battery
right.
technology. Then you can charge it fast. It's not going to, you won't have thermal runaway issues or any of those kind of things. There's also other technologies like LFP, lithium iron phosphate, that I believe the Rivian vehicles all have. So
Mhm.
I don't know that the dust is settled on the
No,
end
it
state
hasn't.
of battery technologies, right?
Yeah.
And I fully agree. If there's a recycling supply chain to be had for those batteries, somebody will develop one and
Yep,
have it
if
make
there's
sense.
money to be made, someone will definitely do it. Because that's what
Yeah,
I was thinking. Even at the Porsche dealers, I had two of them I went to. There's like, yeah, no, you only want to get one of those for a year or two. And I'm thinking, I don't think you guys are thinking down the road. So what if you got one of these now? They're like less than half the price 2 years later.
right,
I'm thinking,
exactly.
so what if 8 years from now, when the battery's like only at 70% or 80% or 60, and then there's a company, send this to California, this company recharge it, and I got a
Mhm.
new car, you know,
Yeah,
and it's not
yeah,
going to be 60 grand, it'll be 10 grand or 15 grand.
yeah.
And it's worth it. So personally, though, I'm hoping that we go to the and most auto repair shops, I think, would agree with me. That we're hoping to go keep the internal combustion engine, just use hydrogen as the fuel. But there's a problem with the stuff not blowing up, and
Yeah, so hydrogen.
transportation.
I started my career in fuel cells, so hydrogen
Oh,
was
you
a big part
did?
of what I
Oh,
did. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
okay. You
I
know about
did.
this stuff then? Yeah.
I do. I did my master's thesis in hydrogen, as a matter of fact. So I was a real
Oh,
big fan of hydrogen for a while. And the problem with hydrogen is just what you said. How do you liberate it, and then how do you move it and store
right.
it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the cost of hydrogen really hasn't come down in a meaningful way. I mean, combustion is going to have its inherent efficiency losses. You have to take chemical energy through thermal energy before you can get to electrical. Every time you do that, it's 30% efficiency hit. So
Right.
you're at 30, right?
Right.
So, I think the use case for small EVs and things, that's going to be a battery. I think where hydrogen could have a niche is heavy truck. Just because of the size of those batteries, how long would they take to charge? Maybe hydrogen makes more sense there. But the question of distribution and supply chain, I mean, do you use the natural gas infrastructure? hydrogen embrittles that material. So I'm not sure that you would, there's a limit to how much hydrogen could be put through there.
Yeah.
There's just, and then a safety element for sure. That flammability
Yeah.
limit is
Oh my
real.
gosh. Yeah. How are you going to
Um,
design cars where if they're in an accident, you don't blow up mom and the kids in a whole city block, you know?
right.
So, because,
Right. Which
right.
is really, and for propane, similarly, that high flammability is a real
Yeah.
safety risk. And those architectures, a lot of people sort of feel like propane will need to be a secondary system constrained and sequestered from the passengers. So hydrogen's
Right.
even more of a concern there,
Right. Yeah.
which is one of the nice things about 1234YF is we don't see that high flammability risk. It's an A2L, which is a mild flammable, but still really safe, and similar to 134A. So that's really where some of the challenges in like a propane and a hydrogen come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. And propane's more suited for like the city bus and stuff like that, because they're not doing high speeds. And if they are in an accident, the propane tanks are going to blow up, you know? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I just thought I'd ask you that question.
Yeah, of course.
What about leaks? Same question with the 444A.
Or
If there's a, what's the performance on your R 456A if there's leak issues?
it is similar. So
Similar. Okay,
450,
that's what I
yeah,
figured.
the composition of 444A is mostly 1234ZE with about 5% 152 and the 12% R32. 456A is almost half, 45% 134A. So it's really just half 134A, and then it has some ZE in there at 49%, and then the balance, what is that, 6% R32. So if it leaks, it's going to have the same characteristics as 134A would, and you would need a bulk leak, probably even a bigger bulk leak than 444A before you'd even notice any kind of a difference.
Okay. The 456A charging card, same issue.
Yeah, and any new refrigerant is going to require fittings and a label, and then the
Right.
charging card would need to be dedicated for that. So it could be reprogrammed, or there could be a new card for
Okay.
it.
And the whole purpose of basically the 456A was a solid replacement for the 134, correct?
Yeah, the value proposition with this one's a little different. So we see regulations are really constraining 134A availability because the GWP is over 1,000, like 1,400, right? So that really limits how much of that material is going to be available. So 456 was developed to say, what if we could have a solution that's less than half of the carbon impact or carbon cost, basically, right, from an allocation standpoint of 134A and give you the same performance, such that you can buy 2 kilograms of 456 for the same carbon cost as you would
Mhm.
for 134A. So it stretches your availability and it allows those 134A vehicles to stay on the road longer. It doesn't force those owners that want to keep them to replace them.
Okay. So, given that the EPA and, of course, cognizant consumers are very concerned about environment, are there any environmental benefits of using your 444A, over the YF, the 1234YF? Is there any specific things like, because all these refrigerants have to be recaptured and we have to do something with them, right?
For sure. And one of the things we're trying to be really responsible with is working with SAE to develop standards to make sure that that's done the right way and that we can give proper guidance on how to do that. I mean, as far as direct environmental benefits, yeah, while the GWP is higher than YF and 444A, the efficiency is significantly higher. So the overall life cycle carbon impact is the same or better in 444A. So from a
Okay.
sustainability standpoint, longer distance, better fuel economy in hybrid or ICE vehicles, longer EV range, this kind of thing. So there's some significant, from a total life cycle carbon standpoint, there's a lot of benefits to it.
Okay. So, as you know, this podcast is primarily, for independent repair shops. So, as you may know, there is, in all human beings, not just shop owners, a resistance to any kind of change whatsoever. I talked to a lot of them where their websites are a little on the antiquish side, but
Sure.
uh, but they're buddies with that person, been doing it a long time, so they use the fuzzy wuzzy marketing method instead of data, which is much better. But have you found a resistance? I'm sure you probably have, right? Because anytime there's a change that comes in, hey, everything's working fine the way it is, type mentality. So
I, Yeah, for sure, for sure. I don't even like to change to the new version of Microsoft Excel. So, I mean, I totally get the resistance to change, right? And
Yeah.
we do hear that question of like, why do we have to do this new one? Is this a conspiracy? Is the government trying to force us into a higher cost refrigerant because the refrigerant manufacturers wanted this? We hear that objection. And I think what I would say is the new blend refrigerants like 456A and 444A are just the response of where the regulations are going. So from the R12 days, we learned that chlorine, which was in R12, put a
Right.
hole in the ozone layer. It thinned that ozone layer out, which was
Mhm.
really, really bad for humanity. So we moved to get rid of that by creating 134A. It was more stable, didn't have chlorine, the ozone holes repaired itself. We learned that it was so stable, it doesn't decompose in the atmosphere. So it created this umbrella and shield, whereas if the 134A is leaked into the atmosphere, it holds the heat in. I
Wow.
mean that's real and it's science. That's radiative forcing at a rate of I don't know a high one of where that umbrella extends the spectrum the spectra yeah the spectrum of radiation to where the umbrella gets bigger and it holds more of the heat. So, okay, go to A2Ls. That double bond makes the molecule rip apart when it's leaked into the atmosphere. The problem with YF is you give up some performance. And then with PFAS, it decomposes into components that, some geographic regions are having trouble with, like trifluoroacetic acid or TFA. So these blends are intended to be extremely low TFA producing, so they're more friendly in with regard to PFAS, and they maintain the low global warming benefit of 1234YF. In addition to the performance benefits that I mentioned, and they're being composed of economic, commercially available pieces.
Okay. Time's money. I mean, what's involved if I'm a shop owner, I want to switch, from YF to 444A, what's involved in that? How complicated is it to make the switch? And does it require a big investment, in changing my cart and all that stuff? What's all involved?
Yeah, and we've got studies for what that total cost of ownership looks like. So there's two paths. There's a modify existing equipment and a buy new. And at the end of the day, the economics of the refrigerant, the unit economics of that new refrigerant, there is a payback to it. So it's a matter of think of it in terms of number of repairs to get back to the investment and
Sure.
beyond. Um, I don't have that off the top of my head. We could certainly compile some literature and send it out to your audience about what those payback analyses look like. There's a heck of a lot of assumptions in there. So the best thing to do is just to reach out to us and we can do that analysis for them if anyone would want. But generally, you're going to need new fittings at a minimum and some way to, if it's just a matter of recovering YF, which there's existing recovery only equipment that exists that's very economical, you may not even need a 1234 YF recovery machine. You could just buy a 444 machine, take the YF out, and then put the 444A in there. That would pay itself back much quicker because you wouldn't need two machines to do it.
Right. Okay. So we originally met at the AMRA conference, and if any of you, if you didn't see the first little mini podcast we did at the AMRA conference, you had shared, that this was all, that this new refrigerant was available for professional use. How do the shop owners get it? Where do I go? Where do I go to get it?
Yeah, so for this year, it's launched under the Johnson brand, and it's available at really any of the major distributors should have this.
Okay.
So Tech Chemicals launched this year for pro service, and then next year it should be everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, for the beginning of the season.
Okay. Awesome. Great. So you're an engineer, obviously, right? So what happens? Tell me about about polymerization without putting us to sleep.
Well, that I wish you wouldn't have added the last part because I'm not sure I could do the first without the second. But basically,
Yeah.
that that event,
Or why it's important, Adam.
yeah, no, it's
Because
it's
it is.
important. Yeah, yeah. So what happens is that you see those molecules that have a double bond are more they like ideally you would want the molecule to be infinitely stable when it's in the system and infinitely unstable if it leaks. So it doesn't stay together and create that global warming. The problem with it is you can't control when oxygen attacks it. So
Right.
that double bond that's in an A2L is like a landing strip for these oxygen molecules that are around an environment. There are some in the atmosphere. That's what breaks it apart when it leaks. But if oxygen permeates into the system in excess of the nominal amount, that's when we see the molecule break down. And so when that happens, the YF molecule forms a white silly string looking polymer that's a solid. So it can go back into solution and be liquid, but it's heterogeneous, meaning that polymer is still there. So when it's exposed to air again, it'll form that white silly string again. So
Okay.
it's extremely damaging because it plugs up any orifice that's there. So it can wreck a service machine or a system or beyond. So it's really, really important then if that excess oxygen or peroxides or high oxidizers are present, it's important that the quality standards and the handling are really, really, really tight to avoid having it touch excess oxygen.
Okay. And I think you really covered, because I was YF is not a blend and the 444A is, but I think you really covered why the 444A is better, the blend is better, correct?
Yeah,
Covered.
and some of those resistance points, it's just blends are more complicated in service for the reasons we talked about, right? Do you need a
Right.
new part, the fittings and all those things. There is this inherent resistance, but blends are the future. I mean, if you think about
Sure.
um, with PFAS regulations challenging 1234YF in Europe and potentially here in the States, with electric vehicles, we've said YF isn't great for heating performance because it can't get cold enough. Um, all of a sudden it's going to take more than one molecule to do everything we're asking it to do. So it's a learning curve. It's a new version of Excel, but once you learn it, the capability and the opportunity is much better because then whatever comes next, you already have the mechanism you need to have a new refrigerant that could address that new thing that we don't even know about yet, that new criteria that we learned. So blends are certainly the future, and we see a lot of people testing that and being interested in it. So the do nothing solution is not going to work. It's a matter of if, not when, or sorry, when, not if, for
Right.
blends.
So you had mentioned in the past about Orbia has a vertical, integration in your product development. So
Yeah.
can you elaborate on that? And and what's the advantage to the shop owner to request the 444A, based on that?
Yeah, so I mean, vertical integration as a principle is beneficial because the supply chain's controlled, right? So in the case of something that happened during COVID, there was just production stopped. So when you own the supply chain and the raw material, there's a lot more leverage to pull in the event of a supply disruption. So there's resiliency that's inherently built into it. We can react a lot better than if we were reliant solely on one external supplier for that kind of thing. We work with external suppliers for different things, but because we have a foot in each of the different process streams, it's much easier for us to control. So from an assurance of supply standpoint, that's one of the biggest benefits. The material is going to be available when you need it.
Okay, awesome. Any questions that I should have asked that I didn't?
Um, One of the big ones that I hear is just about our name. We talked about it a little at the beginning, but
Yeah,
I get a
Orbia,
lot of yeah, yeah,
you guys sell sex toys? Orbia? No, I don't know.
yeah, not quite. So our old name, our very old name was Mexichem, and
Mexi,
so Mexichem, Chem.
Mexicam.
Mexichem, yeah, that
Okay.
was our Mexican entity, and that's where a lot of our legal entity name is still Mexichem Floor Inc.
Okay.
We went by Cora because I mean we're a global company. We have a footprint in every geographic region. We serve global customers.
Okay.
That name kind of made people think that this was just sort of a Mexican entity. So
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Cora was
Okay. You
yeah.
need
So
to get
Cora
out of
was
that pigeonhole.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then Orbia bought the Cora brand.
Oh, I
So
see. Okay.
yeah, there was just a movement to be kind of one Orbia parent company where it's Orbia Floor and Energy Materials, that's Cora, and then we have a few other entities for different business units based in fluorine materials because of the vertical integration that we have. So it's the same. It's the same company that people have been buying 134A. We're the biggest 134A manufacturer in the U.S.
Okay.
To date. So it's the same product and everything that people know. It's just a different name, different polo shirt at the trade show that
There
I'll
you go.
be
I
wearing.
see. All right. I got it. I got it. Okay, cool. Well, listen, we really appreciate your time today. And so if anybody wants to get more information, they can just go to their local supplier, refrigerant supplier, and ask about it, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And our website um, is a good place to go. You can find it at orbia.com. We've got our the different business units are there, and I'm happy for emails. I mean, feel free to get in touch with me. I like talking about this stuff, especially if there's a challenge or something somebody doesn't believe that I've said. Like, I love having dialogues about it. We want to
Sure.
be transparent. So adam.kimmel@orbia.com. Simple
Okay,
enough.
awesome, Adam. We really appreciate your time, and I'm sure I'll see you at another AMRA conference. So,
Looking forward to
yeah,
it.
Were you on the racetrack?
I didn't. I was observing everybody.
Ah,
Yeah.
you should have got out there. It was fun.
Did you do it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I got 2 runs in, and my second run was better than the first run. But I figured out pretty quick the track is 29 seconds.
Okay.
So everything is a tenth of a point, after that because it's pretty, and most of these guys out there driving know how to drive, so.
Sure.
But no,
Sure.
we had a lot of fun. But when I first joined Amron, it was only a couple of years ago. They used to just have dinners at the end.
Yeah.
So everybody sat around a table. How long have you been going to Amron? Long time, or-
2 years.
Okay, yeah, we used to just everybody would go sit around a table, and then they
Mhm.
changed that. They said, "Hey, let's all go meet at this,
Do something.
yeah, Top Golf or something like that, So and it was a really good idea on their part, and more
Yeah.
people. You got a chance to interact with more people, and I really like it. Any shop owner that does not know what the motorist assurance program is, it's $199 a year. You can become a motorist assurance program shop in your area. Just go to motorist.org. And sign up, and then have your digital marketing agency put those logos on the homepage of your website because those are trust signals for your shop. So thanks everybody for your time and attention. Adam, look forward to seeing you at the next conference.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Paul.
For additional automotive resources and exclusive content, follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all our episodes. Thanks again for joining us in the driver's seat, and we'll see you next time for another thrilling episode of Top Shop.